Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the session about product demonstration. Yes, it is estimated that over the next 5 years, there will be a significant increase in clinical trials conducted in the African continent. The Financial Times of 2021 actually places this number at more than 70%. Largely coming out of South Africa punching above its weight in terms of COVID research. We will be presenting an innovative software solution for clinical trials management that's been developed by Alchemy Health Technologies partners, Bloqcube. This software, the innovative part is that it is among the very first to be based on blockchain technology. And for those who need reminding, blockchain's key features are that it's decentralized, it's the immutability, which means once records have been placed on blockchain, they cannot be manipulated, which has got very obvious advantages from audit purposes when one looks at regulatory aspects. It's also highly secure, transparent, and I am sure that you'll be able to see how this has come to be a key feature of the product that we are about to demonstrate. I'm ready to connect to start with the introductions. My name is Dr. Ntutuko Bengu, founder and CEO of Alchemy Health Technologies. We're Johannesburg-based. Alchemy is a health data management company, and we will introduce or contribute towards the reduction of healthcare costs by deploying technologies like what we are going to present today. And yes, and this is really more about Alchemy, but our partner who will be driving the presentation is Mr. Rama Rao, who is the CEO and founder of Bloqcube. He's a very senior executive with more than 28 years experience in the pharmaceutical industry, where he has been a senior executive among established companies like Lilly, Novartis. But also what is of interest is that the new technology that you're about to hear a bit about has already been recognized by no less than organizations like Gartner for its innovativeness. But I will then hand over, without any waste of time, to Rama to take us, and then at the end, we will then come back and I'll coordinate the management of questions and answers. Over to you, Rama.
Thank you, Dr. Bengu. Firstly, it's a delight to be here with you and with our partners, Dr. Bengu and Alchemy. And secondly, while it is a little early for me, I want to be sure that we have a very productive session. So I look forward also to your questions. The structure of the presentation will be a set of slides that frames both the issues, challenges, and solutions. And as Dr. Bengu said, I will then switch to my iPad and demonstrate how our system works, so you can see it in live practice. So the first question that normally comes up is that where exactly are we working with our solution? And a clinical trial process is actually pretty long. Worldwide, we spend almost $26 billion in one segment, which is the site operations and clinical trial execution. But the overall costs are roughly about $100 billion every year. And though it might start with scientific experts like Dr. Bengu or his peers or colleagues, it goes down in a very well-ordered, structured, and sequential path. What we've decided is focusing on the site operations. So there are lots of companies doing a patient recruitment, trial finalization, data management. And some of the issues that take place in clinical trial operations is one is in the post-COVID environment, there has been a significant shift of trials to patients' homes, which is in the industry called decentralization. And the challenge is that if a workflow is suboptimal, this has got exacerbated. In addition, there are issues of data integrity. The EU in the month of May delisted one CRO and all the products that it had been involved in, which was basically almost 100 trials and 100 products. And in addition, in the US and all over the world, the payments to the hospitals, the doctors, the patients, the vendors get inordinately delayed and are very expensive. In the US, for example, this causes a lot of churn, which is that doctors and clinics stop participating in trials. And this can take up to 4 months to get through. Now, our challenge in this whole area is to basically say, well, this is very good at a global level. What is the real true impact in this market? The market is being managed by, for the investors in the audience, by what is called the total addressable market, which is the e-clinical software area, which is projected to be $16 billion worldwide by 2027. And what Bloqcube is doing is it's being very laser focused. We want to work with areas of high growth and even more where the software can represent a leapfrog in technology moving forward. And the beauty of digital software and digitalization is that you can then extend it to different sectors and segments, which also are having a crying need for certain options. Now, the way we have tried to solve this problem and pain points is, firstly, we are working on an iPad, and you'll see me shortly also demonstrating it on an iPad. The second is we've basically moved to a cloud, and the advantage of a cloud-based solution is that it's truly physically decentralized. So I'll show you exactly what that means in our couple of approaches that we've taken. And then, unlike existing software and systems, we basically worked with a blockchain enable. Now, blockchain has come into the vogue most recently, and Dr. Bengu did an admirable job of summarizing the critical benefits of it. But even more than what I would describe the operational benefits, which is the immutability, the one source of truth, the data integrity. What is even more powerful is a term called smart contract, which basically represents a computerized algorithm that the blockchain has to automate certain processes. And by having one single source of truth, you can also have multiple modules that sit and work on it. And what we have done at Bloqcube is tackle the issue of financial payments. And so that basically means you could be sitting in Durban and needing to pay somebody at, let's say, in Mumbli Hospital in Dar es Salaam, or you say the Aga Khan Hospital in Nairobi. That process can take place pretty seamlessly. And that's what we have tried to do with the blockchain system. Dr. Bengu also alluded to the fact that clinical trials are basically growing. Now, if you take a look at this map, which comes from the clinicaltrial.gov database of clinical trials, you'll see currently they're about basically at 15,000 trials, which is just 50% above, let's say, Australia, which is 10,000 trials. And a big part of this is covered by Egypt and South Africa. But the reality is that if you look at, let's say, China, for example, they're doing close to 53,000 trials. So it's almost 3x. So not only is there a significant potential to do trials in South Africa and increase that, but all over Africa. And countries like South Africa can take a significant level of leadership to demonstrate the significance of it. Now, at a paper at ASCO, they indicated that the continent has 17% of the population, but only approximately 2% of clinical trials. Again, the question we need to ask is why? Now, there are some very good reasons, which are come on informed consent and ethical reasons, or laboratories, etc. But when you start then even going down to one more level below, you find that out of 750 trials, only 5% were cancer related. And it's very clear that if you do a cancer trial, let us say on a Caucasian populace, to apply directly in an African context would potentially cause issues. So I wanted to give an example of how a system was used in a cancer community health screening camp in southern India. So basically, they've got a bus which has got, the technology and the technologists, they've got to do X-ray screening. And they set this camp up not directly in a city like Hyderabad or Delhi, but in a small city on the outskirts of Hyderabad, about 200 kilometers away. And they basically ran this using our iPads, gave them about 6 iPads, and they were able to screen 65 patients and in real time, in 6 hours, using our structures. Now, what is more revealing is that all this data was being fed in real time to people outside. So both clinicians and paramedical staff, as well as patients, could also see where there were peaks and where there were valleys and adjust themselves. And going back to what Dr. Bengu said earlier on, the doctors could also see roughly what is the gender, the diversity quotient of the patients. And as you see in the bottom corner, we were geo tagging it. Now, the geo tagging is again another unique feature that we have. And it basically is said that when an individual signs or accepts to put in the data, then we will be able to zero in subject to privacy considerations on what exactly is being obtained at that stage. And you can see the sort of folks who were signing up using an Apple Pencil and an iPad. It must have been the earliest time that they're seeing it. But it basically goes back to the fundamental principle that when we decentralize, are we decentralizing it for the patients who really count? And these are the examples of where our technology, even despite the lack of resources, was very effective. Our second study was an observational diabetes study that took place in Pondicherry in southern India. Now, diabetes is a pandemic also in India. There's supposed to be approximately 95 million patients. And Pondicherry has a very good hospital infrastructure, but they've got community centers which are in rural Pondicherry. And in this case, they were doing an observation diabetes and screening the patients. And in real time, every day, the person could see what was going on. In this case, the PI sitting in her office could see how the informed consent is coming. That's the green bars. What are the demographics like, which is the gender-wise details. And secondly, have the case report forms been filled completely? And every day she would get a data file from that perspective. I'll show you the system in a few minutes, but I'd like to just continue with the slides to emphasize the power of the solution. In the world of decentralized trials, which is a term that's very popular right now, you're really basically taking the trial out of the site of the patient's home. Now, that is doable and not doable. It depends, of course, on the phase of the trial, the product, the therapeutic area, etc. But fundamentally, we could putting in a platform where the technologies can leapfrog over conventional obstacles right now. And it is decentralized with a bridge also to patient rural areas. And even more, you could always have a centralized mission control who's keeping track of what is happening. The other model that we have built over here, and this is especially important for Africa, not just for vaccines, for everything, is a geotagged supply chain module that we have created for clinical materials and lab samples. Another challenge in Africa for doing clinical trials is A, the challenge of quality of labs, and B, the logistical issues. So how would we know really what is happening? So what you see on the left-hand map of the screen is our technical proof of concept where the IoT tracking devices were left in different places all over the world. And then I was shipping out some PET tissues from my home via the courier to Florida, where there was a centralized lab. And when this happened, you'll see this in the bottom left-hand corner. The IoT tracker was tracking 5 parameters: geolocation, temperature, humidity, light, and shock. And the temperature was being tracked on an hourly basis. So when you're trying to do a clinical trial, and whether it is a shipment of a vaccine or whether it is a shipment of a lab sample, you need to have very clear, transparent, and real-time knowledge of what is happening to the sample as it progresses through its journey. And that is a module that we have built to integrate with our system. The other question that comes up very often is that how does this stack up with other competitors, other people? And our humble submission is that we represent, as Dr. Bengu said, a system and a structure where data can flow continuously in real time because of the blockchain piece, but even more by having a unified platform and a financial module, we represent a leapfrog, or be giving you tomorrow's technology today in order to take your trials or clinical studies forward. Even more, this has been tracked by independent companies. There's a company called CBI Insights that looks at different competitors out there, and Medable and Science 37 are two of the biggest players in this area. And I'm obviously very thrilled that as an innovative startup, they pointed out that we had a technological lead over them. This, by the way, is available. If you Google CB Insights and Bloqcube, you'll find this report. The other one that Dr. Bengu alluded to was this Pre-Gallia. Pre-Gallia is also in Africa, but it's considered as one of the Nobel Prizes for the pharmaceutical industry. And we are very thrilled and honored to share that we have been nominated amongst the 13 digital health startups for this prize. So what you see in terms of technology is not technology for the sake of technology, but technology in order to make a digital bridge, cover the rural divide, and at the same time deliver the best of tomorrow's technology. We are having a very good response from people who are talking to us. We're also talking to some customers in South Africa, but even more right now, we're deep into a study where the biotech company is in one location in the US, our customer, which is a contract research organization, in a second location, and the trial is taking place, at the other side of the world. And we hope to demonstrate that everything works smoothly with that. The reason why we are confident about what we are building is we're not technologists who have built a solution looking for a problem to solve. We are domain experts, very senior people who have seen these issues. I have personally, sitting in the oncology portfolio board at one of the large companies, seen some of the issues that have been developed. So we know our solutions are what the right tools to solve the bridge that is there. Now, the other question that comes up very often is, yeah, that sounds good, but why do you think blockchain is good, or who thinks that's good? So this is a very, very, very prominent venture capitalist called Mr. Vinod Khosla. And this was an interview that he gave, and he said, basically, the only real solution to data security is to put it in the form of blockchain. So the beauty of it, it means that, let's say there is a hack, a ransomware hack of one element of the trial. Because it's in a distributed ledger, the whole trial can proceed while we figure out what to do with that area of the hack. That's the data security of it. There's something more visionary that Mr. Vinod Khosa is talking about, and that is the user controlling their own data, which is the true nature of decentralization. We've had our system tested out by HIT Labs, and Dr. Bengu has talked about Gartner also. So we are very proud of all these pieces, but fundamentally, as Dr. Stan Kachnowski of Columbia Business School talked about in his HIT Lab symposia, that we're using a blockchain tech stack to make clinical trials safer, more trustworthy, and more efficient than ever. Very good, strong reviews of people who have seen our system. And this is Boehringer Ingelheim, who built a system like ours with the help of IBM in Canada. And they showed that the cost and the time of simple proof of concept that they did was a significant decrease. And it goes back to what Dr. Bengu said with Alchemy, that we're looking forward to ways in which we can cut costs. This is a Lancet article that has been there on blockchain clinical trials. It gives increased trust. And the whole structure comes together because we have unified the platform, have a single source of truth, and basically combine multiple modules into one. So it becomes a lot easier and less of a strain for anybody who's executing the trial. I don't want to go through this list, but I'll show it to you in the system. But it's got basically lots of strong features. The data is obtained digitally at source. We've got the ETMF where we can store all the documentation. We got security and governance. We got a data integration and dashboard that operates. The US Patent and Trademarks Office has approved our trademark after 2 to 3 years of legal struggle. And you'll see that it's one of the first blockchain-based clinical trial software companies. And this was given about 8 to 10 months back. So to summarize, we are a decentralized system. We got it unified, it's secure, and it does it in real time. And we've got a vision, actually, to go to Web 3.0, which in simple terms basically means is today, if we are healthcare consumers, each of us is having to go to the hospital or take a medication or something of that nature. How do we turn into healthcare producers where we have a very, very critical part to play? And this goes back to the earlier statistic I talked about, which is that even though the continent of Africa has got 17% of the population, only 2% or approximately 2% are participating in trials. How do we take it and move it up in a very cogent, simple, easy to use way for a broader mass of people, and yet keep ethical considerations very clear? In the example that I gave, you showed you in India, we had the informed consent in the local language of that village. So the person who was illiterate or did not speak English or write could at least hear in the local language. So imagine how powerful it becomes in a multilingual country like South Africa to use moving forward. On a lighter note, as I close, I want to talk about this Dilbert copy, which came in the New York Times in May, which again specifies the issue of data integrity. So now what I'll do is I'll go to a demo of the system, and I'll be sharing content when I can stop my share and go to a new share. Just 1 minute while I manage the technology. See, this is the general opening screen that takes place over here. And I'm doing this, I'm typing up my password. And this is the is for the sponsor. And you have a single sign-on with an OTP, and the one-time password has come through. And once this happens, you can see the entire structure that is operating. What you see at the top right-hand corner is actually a Zoom feature so that you can also do telemedicine. You also have a feature where you can control the trial. And the way we built this up is that at the base of our pyramid is the sponsor or the CRO who is setting up exactly how the system is supposed to look alike and identifying the sites, identifying people, identifying who will get paid, identifying all the resources that are required. The benefit of that governance is that we do not have any the wrong person fudging the data or entering into the system that who's not authorized to. On the left-hand side, we have a dashboard also, and the dashboard is basically showing at any stage in real time what is happening. So over here, for example, I can track the adverse events and serious adverse events. I can see data by trial. So if I kind of put this trial over here, you'll say, okay, has a visit taken place? What are the number of subjects? And this is actually showing, where we live, because we were testing it out at home for all the restrictions from COVID. But depending on what the widget is designed, we can look at gender distribution or age distribution, because as you all have seen, that at least in the US, the FDA has come out with revised regulations after the COVID vaccine challenges to have a greater diversity in the profile of patients who are participating in a study or clinical study subjects. We can go back and you can see it's pretty straightforward. Again, going back to what Dr. Bengu said about the immutability of data, whatever trial is taking place is there in black and white. Now, unlike other systems, you'll see that not only is the protocol number, sites, and subjects written, we also have the total budget and current expenditure shown over there. So if I go then to one of the trials, I can see what is the trial details. And if you see this green box, trial payment account status in the top left-hand corner, it's green because it has done a KYC, know your customer, AML, anti-money laundering check done by our partners over here, so that we know we can pay the person when the person comes to you. Then we've got details about the study. Then it's given about the site-related details. And the right-hand side is the budgets where you've got a fixed and variable cost. And this is so that you can have a dialogue really on how things are going and whether there are some real issues involved. Then you can drill down by the site. And here I've gone into one site. And what you see in the roundels that are there is we want to be sure that when the site initiation visit or the feasibility of the site takes place, we have a very clear picture of what is happening step by step. And that happens in real time so that anybody who's managing, like the clinical project manager or even the general manager of the organization, can find out what is happening over multiple sites. The other part is what I described is the finance part. And you can see here budget versus actuals. You remember I mentioned that our finance module does multiple processes. So what it does is it pays, it accounts, and it brings it back into the financial plan. So we'll know over here that if the budget was 38, we're already spending $8 out of it. Let's see, the units are not important. And the reason why that's beneficial is if you're looking at a trial and then measuring patient activity, you can see the financial resources consumed at the same time. So it's basically a bit like somebody driving a car, where in today's world, you can see the speed, but somebody will tell you a little later, a guy like me with my background or a team, on how much gas you're consuming. In our system, you'll see not just the speed at which the car is traveling, but the gas that is being consumed. And then for your colleagues in the finance group, if they wish to see more details about it, then you can drill down. You go together, you see what is the site budget and expenditure. You can go by literally each milestone and see what is happening completely in this whole process. So we've given these kind of powerful tools so that decision making gets faster and there's no issue. I also talked about the eTMF. So in our case, as we go through a flow process, all the documents are there. So that if an auditor wishes from a regulatory perspective to check it, or a QA assessor wants to check it and say, well, I want to see your clinical trial agreement, well, then we can easily pull it up and show, well, here is how the agreement is, this is what is happening, and you can pull it up together. So we've tried to put this together in an easy to use format because we want to bridge the digital divides and at the same time try to accelerate trials. That is our goal, strategically speaking. Now what I'll do is that given the audience, I'm going to go out of this. I'm going to show at a higher level of how all the clinical trial forms are taking place so that you can see that the standard case report forms are all being captured in this whole process. Give me a minute, please, while I type in my password to that. I should be getting my login. It's come. There you go, voila. So you can see that I'm doing this thing, I'm presenting it to you in South Africa, it's going all over the place. So it doesn't matter where I am, I can demonstrate how our system is working or showing. And I'm using my iPad completely for this part of the presentation. So if we go into greater detail, this is what we call the Bsmb dashboard, but anybody who's got the right authorities can see it. And you can look at this at one go and say, oh my God, there was an adverse event observed. Let me try to find out more details about it. You can go right in and say, have there been an event? What is it all about? And the reason why this becomes critical is that given the distances that are involved, we want to be sure that interventions can take place rapidly so that we do not have a situation where the ethics are compromised in any way and the need for care, which is fundamentals of medicine, is never compromised. So here, for example, we are simulating it with a metastatic melanoma trial. We built all the structures based on that. And all this is a simulation. It is not a true trial. And basically show the power of the system. And this will show exactly when it started, what happened, who is the PI who has observed it. And each time somebody signs off on it, it automatically asks for a one-time password and the date and time is stamped indelibly and the geolocation. So you know at all stages what is happening, where it is happening. If I want to see, okay, well, I want to know what happened in the visits prior to that. The structure is such that we have gates that you got to pass through, governance gates. So there is the enrollment, then there is the informed consent. And when I was doing a little bit of research about Africa and clinical trials, I came across some statistics that showed that informed consent is one of the major issues. And there was, of course, this terrible situation that took place some years back with Pfizer and some of its trials, where the arguments were made that informed consent had not been properly taught. So by giving it in the local language and in an audio format, we assert that the I, which is informed, is becoming even more prominent than just the consent. Then if there's some patient privacy gates, that's also present, and then you can really see what happened in the visit. And the visit is basically looking at it specifically, and you can really see step by step. And this is now a very conventional case report form that you will see. If you look at the medication that is being taken, if you look at the exam that is taking place, you want to see the vital signs and ECG and everything and the results that are there. Or you can see, the classic data that is captured in a case report form. And then it can have the eligibility criteria, what are the inclusion exclusion criteria, the person is randomized. So this is because it was a baseline visit These are the structures. And if you decide that you want an audit file, you can say, I want an audit file. And this is the audit file of all that is sent to the email account of the people that is there. So in the interest of time, I'm going to stop over here. I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over for questions, so that you can use the balance to address any other questions. So you're seeing one of the first blockchain-based systems, and we are thrilled to have this opportunity and honored that my partner in Alchemy, Dr. Bengu, and I can have the opportunity to share this with you.
Thank you very much, Rama. Thank you very much also for attending the session. I suppose the key take-home points here is the decentralized nature, cloud-based platform, of course. This is suitable for both urban and rural areas. I think the example used in this particular one was the case done in India. The real-time updates, which enable one to note problems as they arise during the study. But of course, my personal favorite is the integration with the finance module, because when we speak to investigators locally, one of the problems is exactly that, which introduces some long lead times before one can complete the financial aspect of managing the trial. And of course, the independent recognition that this new innovation has received in its early stage. But Rama, I'll just lead with the first question. In relation to regulators, how has this solution affected the approvals process? Is there any experience that you can report?
So I think that's a great question, Dr. Bengu. So the regulators in the US, for example, the FDA, has actually kicked off a couple of years back in collaboration with the NIH, a supply chain and blockchain kind of pilot. So they're testing out blockchain-based solutions. And it really showed that if suppose you had to do a medicine recall, the data could be got together in minutes, unlike current processes which would take days, for example. So the regulators are cognizant of the benefits of blockchain-based solutions. And they also recognize the integrity that it imposes in the whole process. Our solution is one of the earliest, and so far nobody has submitted to the regulators as yet, but there is very clear public comments made by people looking forward to blockchain-based data submissions that I've read. The acting CFO of the FDA 18 months back said precisely that. The second major move is the concept of decentralized trials, and there's a decentralized trials association that is spearheading it, and this is adding more fuel to that speed to which that is taking place, and that's why we believe it is welcome going forward.
Thank you. We have a question from the floor. I don't know, where's the mic? Oh, okay. I think if you can just use that mic, yeah? Yes.
Thank you for the interesting talk. I just want to find out, because you had mentioned that you can also use this in the rural areas. And
Yes,
you know, when you do clinical trials, there are a number of people also involved. You'll have the
Yes,
clinical trial assistant, you'll have the doctor who's responsible for the clinical trial, and you'll have a nurse present. So when you fill in the forms, I see there is a lock-in system, and you lock in with your details. I assume we would all have our own iPads. to sign in where we're supposed to sign, because I don't think it will be safe for you to sign on my login details. Because sometimes when you do clinical trials, you need to be with the patient at the same time. You know, like the other one will sign as a witness, and the doctor and the nurse who's maybe administrating whatever it is that the patient is taking for the clinical trial. So I want to know if that is taken care of, that security of me having to log in with my own details. The other thing is that you spoke about adverse effects. So now, is there a software of some sort that is integrated in this way? The patients can report from home. If they have a cell phone, maybe, they can report adverse effects, which will show on the hospital side, maybe, or the clinical trial side, where I can maybe respond to the patient and tell the patient, come in, or I'm sending somebody to your home to come and assist, something like that.
Right. Both excellent questions, Dr. Bengu. Do you want me to take it, or?
Please go ahead, but you may want to broaden it a bit on the rural angle. Thank you.
Yeah. So, so the first thing is that I'll take with the second part first, which is the adverse events. Our system can also be downloaded through the web to a patient's phone, you know, where they can report the adverse events. And when they report it on the phone, then it automatically gets seen by everybody. And it goes back to what Dr. Bengu said at the beginning. The beauty of a blockchain and distributed ledger is that everybody can see it. So if there's a hospital in that node of the network, it will know. If there's a clinician in the network, he or she will know. So that's the way the patient reported outcome, or PRO, is taking place. It's an electronic PRO. So that's a capability that we have. The second part, which is the usage of it, the reason why we built it onto an iPad is basically for ease of convenience in rural and general areas, so that nobody's carrying and lugging along a brick of a computer and then worrying about connections and connectivity, etc. So the iPad is basically, with different levels of controls, is given to different layers of people in the value chain. And what I mean by that is, a doctor may want to see one slice, the nurse practitioner may want to see something else, the clinical trial coordinator who is taking the data may see something else. And frankly, the way this would also operate is that as the data is coming through, as it happened in our case, in the Indian example of observation diabetes, as the data is coming through at a community center, it was tested at a community center which is about 30 kilometers away, the doctor sitting in her clinic or her laboratory could see exactly what was happening. That was the real-time update. So broadly speaking, yes, it's done on an iPad and it is broadly used.
Just to be clear, Rama, I mean, when you made reference that on the pharmacovigilance question, that when the patient reports a side effect, when you say anyone can see that, I think just clarity that those who are authorized to.
That is correct.
See, yes.
Thank you, Dr. Bengu. That's a very fair correction. At all stages, in fact, one of the arrows in our logo is for governance. So only those people who are authorized to see any data can see the data. That is the system's infrastructure that we set into it. So authorization is very, very critical to be able to see different layers of the data.
Any more questions? Okay. Yeah, please.
Just ask from here. I'm not sure if you clarified the fact that in some areas in South Africa there is no network.
Okay. Yes, Rama, I think when I asked that to broaden the rural question, yes, can you specifically explain experience where there is no network coverage?
Good point. Yeah, I think that question comes up pretty often in our discussions. So there are two solutions to it. One is that we have offline storage of the data. And then when that person comes back into where there's a network coverage, then they can upload the data. The second is also keep in mind, as we're going forward, there are lots of solutions coming forward for places which have got weak coverage taking place. And we believe that some of the issues of rural coverage is going to decrease as we go along. But currently it's an offline mode is present where the data is stored on the iPad. And then once you come back to wherever your base is, where you've got a way to upload, that's when you can upload. And that's what actually happened even in that rural India example. As you saw, some of the people who were signing were living in thatched huts, and there was no internet coverage or any sort of Wi-Fi coverage in those places.
Meaning you still capture on the iPad, it's just not updating centrally until you get into a network area. Okay.
That is correct.
Can it
Thank
be
you, Dr.
married? Can it be married with, again, in extreme cases, with paper?
Yes. So that's not a problem at all. So the way that would happen also is that you can still use the paper and then later on scan and submit that as a backup. So we prefer to use this in a replacement of, but knowing that any technology absorption has a penetration curve, it can be worked with paper also moving forward. And actually in that community health screening camp that took place, they actually tried our system out with a paper-based system and a purely electronic system. And I showed you the data as the purely electronic system.
No, thank you. It's 10:56. Any more questions, comments?
I just would like to add one more last thing. My email is rama@bloqcube.com. Dr. Bengu's you already given. If there are any other questions that come up later and you feel the urge to get an answered, you must feel free to write to me. We'd be delighted to respond to the best of our ability. But we strongly believe that this software would allow a technological leapfrog for the benefit of patients, as well as the advancement of medicine in Africa.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you very much, Rama. Appreciate it. Colleagues, I am around if anyone wants to have further discussions or details in addition to Rama's for further comment. We are in discussion regarding few local pilots. Thank you so much for your attention. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much once again, Dr. Bengu, the convention, for helping me put this together, and for the audience.
Advanced now with 72-hour